it's, as they say, it's in the genes. You know, whatever he was is really what we are. You know.
It's only words, and words are all I have.
He could stand before 100,000 people, lights blazing, the roar of applause echoing like thunder, and still there were moments Barry Gibb couldn't speak. Moments when his voice would tremble, when the words caught in his throat, and every time he sang this song, those moments came rushing back, because Words wasn't just a love song.
Smile, an everlasting smile, a smile can bring.
It was the one thing Barry Gibb could never say out loud, not to the crowd, not to the world, and maybe not even to himself. It was written for the man who taught him everything, and then left him with silence. This is the story of the song Barry Gibb wrote for his father, and why he could never sing it without breaking down. Before we begin, if you love uncovering the real emotional stories behind the music that shaped generations, hit subscribe to RetroWaves. Every song has a story, and some of them hurt to tell. Let's go back to the beginning. In the Gibb household, words were powerful things. Hugh Gibb, their father, had once been a band leader, a singer, and a dreamer. He believed music was the highest form of truth, and he raised his sons to treat it that way. Barry, Robin, and Maurice didn't just learn harmony, they learned discipline, respect, and the quiet burden of expectation. Barry was the eldest, and from the start, Hugh saw him as the one who'd carry the family name forward. He pushed him harder than anyone else. When Barry wrote his first songs at just 9 years old, Hugh would listen in silence, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Then he'd say softly, "That's good, son. Now make it better." Barry never forgot those words. By the time the Bee Gees left Australia for England in the mid-60s, Barry had become more than a songwriter. He was a vessel for the family's ambition. Every lyric he wrote carried a piece of their story, and every melody was a way to reach his father's approval. But something changed when Barry sat down to write Words. It was 1967. The brothers were recording new material at IBC Studios in London. They had hits like New York Mining Disaster 1941.
Like keep straining my ears to hear a sound.
And To Love Somebody.
To love somebody, to love somebody.
But Words was different.
In everlasting words, and dedicate them.
It came from a quiet place, not about fame or romance or chart success. It was about feeling seen. Barry later said that Words came from something deep inside him. He described it as a message, not to a woman, but to the people he loved. He said, "It's about things you find hard to say," and that's exactly what it was. When he wrote the opening lines, "Smile, an everlasting smile. A smile can bring you near to me."
Smile, an everlasting smile. A smile can bring you.
He wasn't thinking of a lover, he was thinking of his family, of Hugh and Barbara, the parents who had given everything so their boys could dream, of the long nights, the one-room apartments, the endless travel, and the hope that one day it would all mean something. Words was a song of gratitude, but also of longing. Barry poured into it everything he couldn't say to his father, that he understood the pressure, that he was thankful, that even when they disagreed, he knew it all came from love. And when he finally played it to Hugh, something rare happened. Hugh didn't critique, he didn't adjust his tie or ask about the chord changes, he just smiled and nodded. And for Barry, that was enough. The song became one of the Bee Gees' earliest timeless classics, a ballad that reached across generations, simple, honest, unforgettable. It wasn't flashy or loud, it was pure feeling, but what no one knew at the time was that this simple ballad would follow Barry through the rest of his life, through triumph, through heartbreak, and eventually through loss. Because decades later, after Hugh Gibb passed away, Words would take on a new meaning, one that even Barry wasn't ready to face. The song that had once connected him to his father now became a reminder of everything he couldn't say before it was too late, and when he tried to sing it again, the world saw the one thing Barry Gibb could never hide, his pain. Before the world knew the Bee Gees as icons of harmony, they were simply three boys under the watchful eye of their father, Hugh Gibb. To outsiders, Hugh was the driving force, the man who molded them, pushed them, and believed in them before anyone else did. But to Barry, he was something more complicated. He was both mentor and shadow, pride and pressure, love and expectation, all at once. Hugh Gibb had once dreamed of his own spotlight. He led a small dance band in the 1940s, performing in smoky English clubs before the war years dimmed those ambitions. When Barry was born, Hugh saw in him a second chance, the kind of talent that could carry the Gibb name further than he ever could. Barry didn't just inherit his father's voice, he inherited his purpose. From the moment Barry learned to play the guitar, Hugh was there, setting high standards, correcting posture, critiquing phrasing. He demanded that every note mean something. Every lyric had to come from truth. Hugh would say, "If you can't feel it, don't sing it." Those words would echo through Barry's life, shaping every song he ever wrote. When the family moved to Australia in the late 1950s, the dream was all they had. They lived modestly, scraping by while the boys performed at local halls and on television talent shows. Hugh was the band manager, driver, and promoter all in one. He booked gigs, negotiated contracts, and fought to make people see what he saw, that his sons were special. For Barry, that kind of belief was both a gift and a burden. Hugh's pride was relentless, but so was his control. He had a temper and a perfectionist streak that could turn rehearsal into a battlefield. Barry learned early that love and approval came through performance. When Hugh was pleased, there was warmth and laughter. When he wasn't, the air turned cold. It made Barry driven, obsessed even with proving himself. Music became not just expression, but survival. He learned to write with emotion that felt lived in, real, painful. Words came from that emotional conditioning, from the habit of saying everything through song instead of speech.
This world has lost its glory. Let's start a brand new.
When the family returned to England in 1967, success finally came. The Bee Gees were signed by producer Robert Stigwood, and the world began to take notice. But behind the scenes, the Gibb family dynamic was tense. Hugh wanted to be part of every decision. He had built this machine, and he wasn't ready to let it go. Barry loved his father deeply, but as fame grew, so did the distance between them. Interviews from that era reveal Barry's quiet loyalty. He never spoke ill of his father, even when there were creative clashes. He once said, "Dad was our anchor. We didn't always agree, but he was the reason we believed in ourselves." During the recording of Words, Hugh would visit the studio, sitting silently in the corner as Barry worked. The pressure to impress him was always there. Barry would later recall that the room felt heavier when Hugh was present, but also more meaningful. His father's eyes told him everything: approval, worry, pride, and love, all without a single word. Words wasn't just a song for the public.
Then I don't even mean a single word I say.
It was Barry's peace offering, his confession, his bridge back to the man who had shaped his soul. Each lyric carried that quiet tension, the need to be understood by someone who rarely spoke of feelings. When the Bee Gees performed Words live for the first time, Hugh stood backstage. Barry could see him through the curtain. He sang every note as if his father were the only person in the room. When the song ended, Hugh didn't clap. He simply nodded once. Barry later said that nod meant more to him than any chart position ever could. In the years that followed, as the Bee Gees rose to international fame, Hugh stepped back. The boys had outgrown their father's management, and professional distance became necessary. But the bond, the invisible thread of respect and love, never truly broke. Barry called his father before every major project, sometimes just to ask for advice, sometimes just to hear his voice. Then in 1992, everything changed. Hugh Gibb passed away quietly at home. It wasn't sudden, but it hit Barry like a storm. He had lost the man who had taught him how to feel through music, and for the first time, he didn't know how to express it. He tried to sing Words at a private memorial gathering, but he couldn't finish. Halfway through the first verse, his voice faltered, his hands shook. Robin put a hand on his shoulder, and the room fell into silence. Barry stepped back, whispered, "I can't," and walked off stage. For the rest of his life, that song would never sound the same. Words had once been about love and gratitude. Now it was about absence.
This world has lost its glory. Let's start a brand.
To the world, it was still a beautiful melody. But for Barry, it was the sound of loss, the echo of everything left unsaid between a father and a son who spoke only through music. After Hugh Gibb's passing, The world continued to move forward for Barry, but something inside him didn't. He went back to the studio, back to the stage, back to being the voice of the Bee Gees, but the music sounded different now. Every lyric carried a new weight, every performance felt like an echo. The loss of his father hit him harder than anyone realized. Hugh hadn't just been a parent, he was the foundation. Every note Barry had ever sung, every chord he had ever strummed, had been shaped by that man's belief in him. Now that belief was gone, and so was the quiet approval Barry had spent his entire life chasing. He would later admit in interviews that he couldn't bring himself to listen to certain songs. Words was one of them. The opening piano chords felt like a whisper from his past, one that always ended in silence. The Bee Gees were at the height of their fame during the late 1990s resurgence. Their induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, tribute concerts, television specials, all celebrated their musical legacy. But even as Barry smiled for the cameras, there was a quiet pain beneath the surface. When people spoke of the brothers' legendary harmonies, few noticed the sadness in Barry's eyes whenever Words was mentioned. During rehearsals for a BBC special, the producer suggested including Words in the setlist. Barry agreed at first. It was, after all, one of their most beloved ballads. But when he stepped up to the microphone and the familiar melody began, his voice trembled. The first line came out soft, uncertain. By the time he reached the chorus, he stopped singing. The band kept playing, not realizing what had happened. Barry turned away from the microphone, took a deep breath, and quietly said, "I can't do this one." It wasn't a matter of performance, it was memory. The song that had once united him with his father now reopened the wound every time he tried to sing it. For Barry, Words had become a mirror of everything he'd lost: his father's presence, his brother's laughter, and the innocence of those early days when music was still a family dream. But as time passed, the song kept finding its way back to him. Fans would shout for it during concerts, orchestras would ask to perform it with him, and each time, Barry faced the same question: could he sing it again without falling apart? The answer, more often than not, was no. Still, there were rare moments when he tried. One of the most unforgettable came during the late 2000s at a charity concert in Miami. Barry walked on stage alone, guitar in hand. No brothers, no backup harmonies, just him and the silence. The crowd erupted as he began to strum the first few chords of Words.
A smile can bring you near to me.
His voice cracked almost immediately. The audience fell silent, sensing something fragile unfolding. Barry smiled faintly and said into the mic, "This one's for my dad." Then he closed his eyes and continued. It wasn't the perfect version of the song, far from it. His voice broke on the high notes, and he paused between lines as if the memories were catching up to him. But that's what made it real. Every note carried decades of love, guilt, and longing. It was Barry Gibb, not the superstar, but the son, still trying to speak to the man who taught him what words could mean. People in the audience wept openly. Even those who didn't know the story could feel it, that unmistakable ache of someone singing through pain. When he finished, Barry didn't take a bow. He just whispered, "Thank you, Dad," and walked off stage. Later, when asked about that performance, he said quietly, "There are songs that belong to the world, and songs that belong to your heart. This one will always be his." Through the years, Words became a haunting presence in Barry's life. Whenever he performed it, even with orchestras or duets, the emotion was unmistakable. His eyes would glisten, his hand would tremble slightly on the guitar, and every fan who saw it knew this was not just music. This was memory made sound. But grief has a strange way of transforming over time. What once felt unbearable began to shift into something else, something softer. Barry started to realize that maybe Words wasn't meant to hurt forever. Maybe it was his father's way of staying close. And so after years of avoiding it, Barry decided to face the song one last time, in the most unexpected way. Time has a way of softening pain but not erasing it. For Barry Gibb, grief never disappeared. It only changed its shape. As the years passed and the world moved on from the era of the Bee Gees, Barry carried their music like a sacred memory. Every melody was a photograph. Every lyric, a letter that could never be sent. But one song followed him more closely than all the rest. Words.
In everlasting words and dedication. take them off.
It was the thread connecting everything: his father, his brothers, his beginnings, and the silence that came after them. It was the song that refused to die, even when it hurt too much to sing. When Robin passed away in 2012, Barry found himself alone on a stage that had always been shared. For the first time, the harmonies were gone. The laughter backstage, gone. It was only him, the last Gibb brother, standing. And as he tried to process that unbearable truth, the one song that kept calling to him was the one that started it all. He decided he would sing words again, not because he could bear it, but because he couldn't not. It was the only way to speak to all of them, his father, his brothers, the ghosts that still followed him onto every stage. At a tribute concert in London, Barry walked slowly toward the microphone. The audience rose in a standing ovation before he even sang a note. He smiled faintly, eyes glistening. Then, without introduction, he began to play the familiar opening chords. His voice was softer now, older, cracked by time, but still unmistakably his. "Smile, an everlasting smile," he began.
Smile, an everlasting smile.
The words drifted through the hall like a prayer. There was no band behind him, just a piano and the echo of memory. When he reached the line, "This world has lost its glory. Let's start a brand new story now, my love," his voice quivered.
This world has lost its glory. Let's start a brand new.
For a moment, he closed his eyes and tilted his head back, as though he could feel his father's hand on his shoulder again. The crowd stayed silent, hanging on every note. By the time he finished, tears streaked his face. He didn't hide them. He didn't need to. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Barry didn't speak. He simply looked upward and nodded, the same way Hugh had nodded to him all those years ago when he first played the song. That night, words became something new. It was no longer a song of loss. It was a song of gratitude, for love, for family, for the bond that time and death could never break. Barry had found peace, not by forgetting, but by remembering with tenderness instead of pain. In later interviews, when asked about words, Barry's answers were short, but heavy with meaning. "It's about the things you can't say," he would repeat softly, and how sometimes a song is the only way to say them. He began performing it again, carefully, reverently, at select shows. Each time the audience could see what it meant. He would sing it slower now, each phrase deliberate, as if he were writing to his father all over again. The pain was still there, but it had changed into something beautiful. And yet, even as Barry healed, the song's power never faded. It became his signature, his confession, and his farewell all at once. For fans, hearing Barry sing words was like stepping into the heart of his story, a man who had lost almost everything but still found the strength to speak through music. In his quiet moments, Barry has said that he still feels his father's presence, sometimes when he's writing, sometimes when he's on stage, sometimes in the silence that comes after the last note fades. "He's still here," Barry once said. "I can feel him when I sing. Maybe that's why I keep doing it." To this day, Words remains more than a classic love song. It's a bridge between generations, between a father who dreamed and a son who fulfilled that dream. Between the boy who needed approval and the man who finally understood love doesn't always need to be spoken. Every time Barry Gibb steps on stage and the lights go dim, there's a moment before he sings when he closes his eyes and breathes in deeply, almost like a prayer. And when the first line leaves his lips, it isn't just music anymore. It's memory, it's forgiveness, it's everything he never got to say. Because words will always belong to the man who taught him what they meant. And somewhere, if you believe in such things, Hugh Gibb is still listening, nodding once, quietly proud of his son who finally found peace through the very thing they shared from the beginning. Their language was never just speech, it was music, and long after both their voices are gone, the song will remain, saying everything they never could.